Hi, good morning, Michael Tellis. You're from sunny Adelaide today, is that right?
That's right, Gia. Thanks so much for getting up so early in Berlin and making the time to have a chat to me.
Well, look, I've been given some really wonderful notes that you are a business owner, a very friendly man, and also an astute investor. So I'm really curious to get inside that head of yours, if that's okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, look, I really want to kick things off. And I want to start off on like a very top level. Like I know, like I said, you're a business owner. You've recently sold your IT business. And
Yeah.
so I'm really, really curious, like how do you apply your commercial acumen to investing and managing your own assets?
Thank you. Well, the obviously we're talking about the shares asset at the moment, and what it is just like any business. You build up a portfolio. In our case, in businesses, a portfolio of clients and a portfolio of people that work with us, whether it's employees or contractors, and you're always trying to balance that to optimize what's going on. So for the shares, to me, it's all about having that sort of core portfolio that
Mhm.
you know are good companies that you buy on weakness, what we, let's, for want of a better expression, the Warren Buffett approach to life. And
Mm.
then there's that other part of your portfolio, which is exciting and maybe got some risk in it and the thrill of investing in very small companies that are just starting out. So you're part of that journey for however long that journey is valid. And that's really how I'm approaching the share investing. And there's been lots of lessons along the way, shall we say, some good and some bad. So
Well,
um,
let's dive into that very shortly.
sure.
Look, coming back to this is I'm aware you have a few portfolios that you manage. So I'm really curious if you're able to tell our members, a bit about the two portfolios you manage. What are they? And then segueing into like how does having access to research and maybe not even just shares in value help you explore investments that you may have typically avoided in the past?
Thank you. Yes, I've got my self-managed super fund, which is all in shares. I don't own any property in it. So
Okay.
there's that balance in those portfolios there. I then have a small investment company, and that's really shares I'm looking at for the very long term. So that'll be what I'll pass on hopefully to my daughter at some stage, or I might spend it all. Who knows what happens, right? So those shares are really like the Brickworks and others, which are very long-term holds. And actually, I bought Brickworks because Scott Alder recommended that one. I hadn't looked at them before. So I'm revisiting those companies to see who's there for the long term. And those are
Mhm.
really companies that are what I sometimes might refer to as the set and forget. So I'm looking for capital growth and some dividends, but
Mhm.
really they're long-term holds. And then I've got some other shares which I play around with,
Yep.
which are more high risk. So
Ah,
there's when I worked in London in stockbroking, we call them the penny dreadfuls. So they're
yeah.
the ones which have got a lot of high risk. So your stop losses really need to be accurate on those.
Your
So, and
pink
that's
sheet.
something I'm still learning and still playing around with.
And okay, so I want to go drill in a little bit more, right? So with the research that you receive, and do you specifically use it for example, your smaller holdings, or do you also apply the research that we deliver to you into your self-managed super fund as well?
uh, Across researchers across all of them,
Okay.
and obviously, and the trades that come by text are probably the ones that are the more fun ones to play around with. But when you and but those bets are more like 10 or 20 grand. The other
Mhm.
ones are bigger. So the research
Mhm.
is important for those
Mhm.
because and I call them bets because sometimes that's what they are, right? But
Yep.
the longer term holdings are not bets. They're in those good, solid companies that you can put a lot more money in, and then you just watch them grow over time.
Right, now I get it. And look, you already mentioned Brickworks. Is there any other companies just off the top of your head that you can remember that perhaps they wasn't something you even considered exploring? I am aware you had an aversion to biopharma, but there were perhaps one or two plays that you engaged with. I'd love to know more about that and how you use that research, like basically on shares that you never would have considered.
Uh, okay, that's probably a complicated answer, but I suppose the short version of that answer is that it's there's certain values that I have, and I
Mhm.
try and invest in companies that follow those values.
Sure.
So my lifestyle is, for instance, organic food.
Hmm.
So without naming stocks, I wouldn't invest in a fast food company, for instance.
Okay, so you're very, like when you say values, you're talking about intrinsic values driven and social and ethical investing.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. I
So,
see.
yeah. Yeah. So in that respect, fast food doesn't sit with although I know there's one company in particular, a lot of people are promoting because it does very well, but I wouldn't knowingly invest in a company that's against my values. Now, sometimes if you
Mm.
invest in a conglomerate, you get caught up in certain investments, and then you have to make that judgment: do I, don't I? But I've had owned banks in the past, and of course, banks fund everything. So there's just that balance, but I try not to knowingly invest in a company that doesn't align with my values.
Well, I can see that. I guess hanging right behind you is Buddha, so I think it's a reflective. And look, in that case, I want to talk about the role of the account manager then. Like, obviously, you have a strong relationship with your account manager. Have you advised them about your values-based decision so that when they do make recommendations and have conversations with you, it's aligned with who you are?
Absolutely. So I've been talking a lot to Catherine, so Kat, and yeah, she will
Beautiful
say things
soul.
like, "Well, I won't mention a name, but I know you probably won't invest in this company, but we recommend this company for those who are happy to invest in it." So, and then sometimes that might urge me to go deeper
Sure.
into the organization to see whether it is worth investing, because my initial thought about non-value alignment might be different when I
Hmm.
understand what they're doing. And you mentioned pharmaceutical companies. There's those who are very aligned with what I do, and I have
Yeah.
pharmaceutical investments, and there are
Yep.
those who I'm not sure about. So
Mm.
we'll just might leave that one as it is before we get into some subjective values.
Understood. So if I'm reading between the lines, is you were open to it as long as they were in alignment and there were some plays that you
Mm.
made that you were happy with because they were congruent with who you are intrinsically.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So in that regard, to just flesh that out just a little bit,
Please.
um, the research allows me to go deep into companies, because there might be a recommendation that I just would ignore, but if Kat says no, well, just look at the report. And then I
Mhm.
might look at it and go, oh, and again, you should never assume, right, in anything, because assumptions are dangerous. So then I read the report and I go, oh, actually, no, that's fine. They're developing something, they're testing something that I agree with,
Sure.
that should be fine. And if it's obviously a great recommendation from the team at Shares and Value, then why wouldn't I?
And I mean, coming into the report now, what sort of key indicators do you look for when you're reviewing the report? Because, I'm aware that the reports are quite intensive and I have a deep respect for what our analysts actually do. So, what are the key indicators you look for?
Um, well, it depends on the portfolio. So that's for the long-term holds. It's
Hmm.
good management,
Hmm.
a bit of a track record of doing what they say they're going to do,
Hmm.
some stability, etc., and the fact that they're innovative as well. And
Mm.
because the new thing right now is, you can obviously, the bricks and mortar stuff is great, but the
Hmm.
online is more where a lot of the action is, and then taking an idea and moving that forward, because that's where you get the exceptional growth as well. So
Right.
you're early to market. So those are sort of little nuances, but like anything, when you invest in a company, I actually believe you're investing in people.
Mm.
So
Yep.
that's where the executive layer, the management, and their track records come in. And even with some companies, so retail companies like JB Hi-Fi, and I buy a lot of stuff from JB Hi-Fi, you talk to the people, right? The employees, and then you gauge the level of service from the employees. And for instance, I was at JB Hi-Fi buying some video equipment a little while ago, and the
Yep.
manager there just reeled off the company values. And to me, that's just phenomenal. Obviously,
Yep.
JB Hi-Fi's price at the moment is a bit high, so we'll wait for some weakness. But And that's the sort of analysis to tie back into shares and values. They say, great company, but geez, it's not really the time to buy in. You can top up, but it's not a sell, it's a hold. But geez, on any weakness, we'll buy. So Mineral Resources was one
Mm.
where a note came out saying if you haven't got mineral resource shares, great time. Prices dip for whatever reason, I can't remember now. Jump in and buy and top up, or top up depending on your where you're at.
Well, look, I think Chris Ellison has had some liaisons with ASIC at the moment, but you're right. It is still a fantastic company, great fundamentals, and I like
Yep.
and like you said, that's what it comes down to. I'm really curious now. I mean, coming back to your account manager that you have quite a good relationship with, how much of that do you think has been an important aspect of you being a member and staying a member with us for this time frame, um, and the overall impact that they've had on you as a sounding board?
Um, it's the critical aspect because
Okay.
you can get there's any number of reports out there, newsletters, etc., and
Mm.
nobody calls.
Yep.
So I think that's quite an important aspect of what shares and value offer, is that ability of people to pick up and just check in. It's not
Mhm.
having major conversations, but
Mhm.
just that regular phone call saying, "Oh, by the way, and here's one that we would strongly recommend because our analysts think it's a great opportunity." Those sort of little insights are always good because you then know there's somebody behind the newsletter. There's the real there
Yep.
are real people who's not in this world of AI driven. I'm not saying anything from shares and values AI driven, but there's real people behind there and then just not running numbers, which is fantastic.
Well, I definitely know it's not AI driven. I was in the office in July for nearly a month, so it was very human and Ricky driven.
Yes. Yes, I know. And Ricky, and also Catherine, I was account manager, but I've had lots of chats with Ricky, and
Good.
he's just fantastic in how he promotes. And Ricky's quick and short and sharp, but obviously we'll always take the questions, as does Scott as well, if anything needs to be done. In fact, I've just emailed Scott and I were just emailing this morning. So I love the service, and to me, being in a service industry most of my life, I recognise that, and it's terrific.
It's tangibilizing the intangible. I have another important question now in that case, coming back into this. Look, before this, we started recording, you mentioned another provider that you had used previously. And we won't name names. I want to tell you that I also used that provider many years ago. Um,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I guess you made you were about to go into some differences, and like I said, you're a gentleman, positive. Like, how would you say the difference, and how has things evolved with working at Shares and Value, perhaps to the other providers that you've used in the past?
Uh, well, the nature of their reports have changed slightly, and
Mhm.
and it was just harder for me to work out whether one was a buy or a sell, or it
Right,
just seemed there was a lot more analysis going on rather than hard recommendations, and that's what I
right.
like about shares and value. And that
Mm,
other provider, I had an account manager, but they left, and
mm.
then people don't follow up regularly. So that's where that critical call every now and again is I think a very important aspect to customer service.
I totally agree. Thank you. And look, given your busy schedule, the SMS alerts. So you said that it's the fun part. Like, do you enjoy receiving them and do you act on it?
Yes, yes, yes to both. And they're,
Yeah.
they're the ones where um, those are the bets sometimes
Yep.
because, and obviously there's stop losses involved, etc. And I'm still learning on those. So I'm still being a bit shy, shall we say, in terms of the dollars invested, but that's just a confidence thing because I'm not a trader. Although
Mm,
I did work for a stockbroker many years ago, I've never traded, like tried to do day trading or anything.
sure.
So these are, as I said, I'm more of a long-term investor.
Good.
But these are great fun because you can, you punt a bit of money, have a bit of fun, and see what happens.
Well, I think you've earned the right to do that, Michael.
Fun. There's something
Uh,
called asymmetrical risk that I'm trying to understand, but I think I've got the gist of it. But we'll see what happens.
when you get a chance, look up Sam Ovens, and he does a really wonderful video about asymmetrical risk, and about the
Just write
outcomes
that
of
down.
business. And look, I do have one more question. I've really enjoyed
Sure.
this, but I try not to run over time. So let me ask you, if there is an investor and a potential shares in value prospective member sitting on the sidelines pondering, like I guess in a very neutral way, what would you have to say to them right now?
Well, probably what we've covered today in terms of the style of the reports, the convictions in the recommendations,
Yep.
the updates. Oh, I haven't mentioned obviously the fortnightly webinars as well,
Oh,
which
yes.
obviously are recorded. So that's should have mentioned that earlier. That's also terrific because there's a lot of detail that goes into that, and you can watch them later if you haven't got time. So there's a lot of information coming, but ultimately.
Mm.
As I said, it's that that call every now and again, that keep in touch. That's
Hmm.
very important. But ultimately, what I say to everybody, including the work that I do, is it's your decision at the end of the day. And if you
Yeah.
can map out what you want, then
Hmm.
it's a lot easier for companies like Shares and Value to meet your requirements because you're
Mm.
clear in what you want. As I said, my portfolio is structured uh, slightly differently for each portfolio, but at
Hmm.
least I know what I'm trying to do. And that didn't happen overnight. That
Hmm.
came through education, reading, and speaking with people. So that sort of combination then comes together. And that's where the alchemy really kicks, is when you
Yes.
understand what you're doing and you can advise whoever's advising you as to what you want from them. And then as the two of you get to know a little bit more about each other, then I think
Mm.
really some magic happens.
Oh, fantastic. And I think just to cap that off, from what I can sense as well, is you have a very balanced approach, and more importantly, you have a really wonderful relationship to the way you approach managing your money and actually managing your wealth. And you see it as it's joyful to you, right? You enjoy it as opposed to seeing
No,
it as a chore. You wake up, you like
definitely.
it.
Uh, Wish I could spend more time on it, but the universe is calling me to do something else. But maybe that's my reward that I get to play with money.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time, Michael. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks, Gia. Lovely to meet you as well via Zoom. And you never know, might see you in Sydney one day at the Shares and Value office.
I love Australia. It's my home country. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Have a good rest of the day.